Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise in opposition to this piece of legislation. Over the last couple of years, we've had a couple of proposals that dealt with drug use and its criminal component. We chose to change marijuana from being a crime to an infraction. And we also chose to begin the process to institute medical marijuana in Connecticut. And the impact for me on that was a few months ago, my 7th grade son was driving with me in the car. I picked him up from school, and he referenced marijuana as being medical marijuana. And it really took me aback, because that's not the way that I want my adolescent to be viewing drugs. And now what we have today is a bill that's going to open up the buffer zone that we've created around our schools. And I struggle with this because we just had a controversial bill dealing with creating community schools in our towns and cities. And I did support that measure because I believe in order to try to close the achievement gap, we do need to make efforts within our schools to help these children and offer them additional resources. They are one of the few sacred places, I think, in our communities where children and families can go not only to learn in the academic sense, but also to participate in other activities like sporting events and the such. And so I think that there was a good reason to allow this 1,500-foot buffer. It wasn't just to protect drug deals within the schools, but it also was around the surrounding areas. Because when that bell rings and the children go outside to play their various sports, I know my children are there alone with their coaches and not necessarily with their parents, but there's other activity outside those zones. And so we're affording that protection to try to make sure that we are going to give people a heightened penalty because we don't want our children exposed to these type of drugs. And I had a problem enough when we reduced marijuana to an infraction, but I didn't think it was, I saw the reasons why we were doing it. But we have to recognize the fact when we did that and reduced it to an infraction, we took those individuals out of being subjected to this school buffer, this heightened penalty provision. And so if we all think that marijuana isn't that big of a deal, well, those individuals who might be caught with a joint on a school ground is no longer going to be suffering from mandatory minimum sentences because we created it as an infraction. And now what we're doing with this bill is just taking a hatchet to this policy and basically opening up the door for all drugs to be entering into our schools. I understand that the city buffer zones are more dense, but our suburban areas are not. And this is going to have a dramatic impact. And if we believe that certain activities might be able to take place around a school, then we should have that conversation and use a scalpel to carefully protect this important public policy. But to now chop it off, reduce the zone, and potentially expose our children to activities that I don't believe anybody in this chamber really wants to expose them to, I think it's wrong. And you can't justify this bill in any way. Yes, it might treat cities differently because they're more dense, but bottom line, we don't want our children exposed to drugs. This is an important policy I think we should be keeping in the state of Connecticut, and I am truly disappointed that we're talking about this today. So I stand in opposition. Thank you, Madam Speaker.